Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm your host, George Blitch. And guys, I just had a wonderful chat with Mark Greene. Mark Greene is a former Navy SEAL. He has just put out the book Unsealed. This book is amazing. I highly suggest everyone go and check it out. We talk a lot about transitions. It's kind of a theme of the book, too, of him getting out of being a Navy SEAL, what's next in his life. And even before that, the transition of being on the trajectory of being a professional football player and then having a shoulder injury that changed that transition of going from having your father there to having your father pass away and what's that's like, and then being a parent and then going through a divorce. This book really takes a deep dive into his personal life, and talks about some of the highs and then really some of the lows and how he was able to get through those and be here today, still surviving after going through some very dark moments. This book is phenomenal. I absolutely love my time with Mark. He is such an amazing man. He's served this country, as a Navy SEAL, but he's also served everyone by writing this book and being vulnerable and really telling his true, authentic story in a way that it can't help but move you and motivate you to become a better person and make sure you're looking out for your own tribe, your own brotherhood, sisterhood, family, looking out for those because, these are some invisible wounds that a lot of people have. And we see the visible ones, right? But those invisible ones, they can be lurking around and they can be devastating. And we need to be able to look out for ourselves and our community, and especially those who have served this great country and that, we owe it to them. We talk a little bit about the 22 suicides a day by veterans, and that may be an underreported number. And we got to do everything we can to look after and continue to help those who have sacrificed all and their families, as he talks about too. So, guys, I think you're going to enjoy this podcast. It was one of my favorite. Again, you guys go check it out. Mark Greene Unsealed. We will be giving away some of these books, so stay tuned for details on that. But without further ado, here is my podcast with Mark Greene. Hey, Mark, how you doing today, man?
Doing great, George. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, man. Now, we got a lot to talk about. You have your debut book, Unsealed. This is absolutely one of my favorite books I've read in a long time. And you did such an amazing job with this. And it was wonderful to kind of learn about, your journey and all the things you've gone through in your transitional moments. You have so much to share and teach with others here. And I'm just super appreciative that, we get a chance to chat with this and, have our listeners get a chance to talk and, hear us talk about it. And I kind of feel like the first thing we need to do is kind of bring it back to the beginning. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about, where you grew up and, maybe kind of we can talk through, your time and the injury that happened playing college football in that first, big transitional moment there. But yeah, if you don't mind, kind of let's start us off at the beginning and, little one-on-one on who you are and where you're from.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank you for having me on. We have a lot of things that tie us together. So doing this podcast is a great opportunity. So I want to start off by saying thank you for doing that. So my origin story is I was an Air Force brat. So was born in Anchorage, Alaska, and consider myself a Buckeye from Ohio because the family was anchored in Ohio. And then, we would go Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines and then Okinawa, mainland Japan, and then finally settled back into Ohio in 1984 and stayed there until I joined the Navy in 96. But, great relationship with grandparents and extended family. So those relationships were really kind of made me who I am today, just because there were so many men around and, grandfathers of that era. Lots of wisdom, very stoic. And, these are the rules, and it was very rigid, but they were always around. And then I had a great father who was present. So, those are my origin stories. But I got to really know the older generation because both my grandfathers were around, and they would tell stories, and I was enraptured by them when they would talk, which was a rarity.
Right.
So that's where it all started. So when I joined the military, my paternal grandfather served in the Army in the Korean War. So with that, and then my father joining the military was always an option.
Mhm.
Wasn't in the forefront, but it was always kind of like, well, if this doesn't work, then I would love a military career.
Yeah. Well, and that's, a lot of people, it's either one way or the other, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I know my dad grew up, kind of an Air Force brat, and he's like, didn't want to go and have that kind of lifestyle and have a family in that because it's so disjointed and you're moving around. You just never know. It's like you're always kind of off balance in some ways as the kid. And so that was something there. But you had, you talk about too, you had some really strong male role models, and you also had a very strong athletic lineage. I mean,
Hmm.
your grandfather played in the Negro League as a pitcher. Your dad, very strong athletic stuff. And he was also talking to you. And I mean, you dedicated this book to him. And he was, I think he said that the quote is like, son, make sure you do something a little bit better every day.
Hmm.
And you kind of took that with your progression in sports too, because that was something that you were excelling at, and you were playing football at a very high level. And kind of just walk us through that, because that was something that it looked like for a while your trajectory might have been into that professional football realm, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So, we didn't grow up wealthy, and my dad was like, you're going to college, but you only have a couple options. It's uh through sports or through sports. So, so at 9, played for the Mad River Tomahawks in Dayton, Ohio. I was in 4th grade, and I was getting ready to go to my first practice. And my dad looks down and was like, "Hey, we don't greens don't quit. Once we start something, your team's relying on you. So if you're on the bench or if you're starting, once you start something, you're not quitting it." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, Pop." And he stops me, kneels down, looks me straight in the eyes, like, "I don't think you understand what I just said. Once you start something, you don't quit." I was like, "Okay, yes, sir." And that was the catalyst for everything that happened in my life afterwards.
Yeah.
So I was a big kid, big, fast kid. So I progressed pretty well. And then I decided to play quarterback, and I was progressing really well. And then um, went to play at Miami of Ohio and Kent State. But the year before I went to play at Miami, I got to work out with Randall Cunningham, who back in the
Nice.
day,
He was the
Randall
man.
Cunningham. Yeah, yeah, he was the man.
Yeah.
He started off one. He was one of the few black quarterbacks other
Yep.
than Warren Moon.
Right.
Um, but he was prolific. Who's this guy who's running around all over the place and he can then throw the ball 60 or 70 yards? So I got to work with him, and he just said, "Okay, you have all the raw talent, but you don't know what you're doing." So I stuffed myself in his pocket for the week that I was around him, and he just taught me football, and it really was like, okay, I get it. And then went to Miami of Ohio and had a great coaching staff, and they taught me football for the first time.
Yeah.
So in high school, the coaching staff is pretty limited a
Mhm.
lot. So I never actually learned how to play football. And one day they took the red shirts and said, "Okay, um, here's what we're going to do, Mark. You're going to drop back. You're going to put the guy in motion, which is going to freeze the corner, and you're going to do play action, which is going to freeze the linebacker. And then the play's going to open up right over here, and you're going to do a 7-step drop." And I was just like, "Why are you telling me this?" But he said, "And this is the football play." I was like, "Okay." So George, I dropped back, did everything he said, and right where he said it was this big open field where I was where the receiver was going to be, and I was so shocked by it because I had just learned football in that moment. I've been playing since I was 9, and at 18 I was just like, I just learned football. So I got sacked because I froze there because it hit it hit me.
I
That's
got
like,
it. Swam. Yeah.
holy football. And a guy named Mark Staten just cleaned my clock, but I learned football at that moment, so I was like, okay, I get it now. And then I went to Kent State, transferred to Kent State, and just the coaching staff was different. The atmospherics were different, and I wasn't thriving at the same level, but I was still progressing. But then took a really horrific shoulder injury after a touchdown. The guy was getting yelled at by the coaching staff. So he's like, "Well, I'm gonna go hit that hit that kid who's embarrassed me and wasn't paying attention and hit me square in my shoulder from the back and completely destroyed my throwing shoulder.
And this is
So
after the play. This is
after the
no
play,
play going on,
yep,
right? This is just
yeah,
his retaliation of
yep,
anger and frustration, right?
yep, and hit me right in the shoulder. And I saw the video of it later, and you could tell the shoulder was done.
Did you have any immediate repairs? Because I know later on, and we'll talk about it too. You had some shoulder surgeries,
Mhm.
right before you left your time in the SEALs. But what was that then? Was it just you were in pain and you couldn't throw, or were you actually having a surgery and it was like you were sidelined? And then how is it you knew that was it in that time and sense for college football?
I couldn't lift my arm past shoulder height, and so I went to the doc, and he's like, "Okay, this thing's going to heal up in a couple years, or we can, cut you open from basically your top of your shoulder down to your rib cage, do the repair, and you might get stuff back. But it's like this thing will heal. It's just torn up pretty good right now." So I was like, you know what? I don't want to have a major surgery at such a young age. So I was like, you know what? I'll just go ahead. Football career is over. I get it. Um, and then my friend Jeff was in the room with me. He's like, Mark, don't worry about it. We're going to go be Navy SEALs next. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he showed me this video, Be Someone Special.
This is on
And
VHS, yeah.
VHS, yeah,
Uh-huh.
beta was just,
Yeah.
phased out. So we had VHS. And he showed me this video, and I was just like, oh. And
That's
I
it.
was absolutely like, I was like, okay, this is this is weird, but I love it. And the attrition rate at 80%, even just was like, okay, I get to be somebody special. My mom had already said, son, you're going to be great one day. And I was like, this is it. So, but at the same time, I was supposed to not quit because I started college.
Right.
So I was just kind of going through the motions, and football was no longer an option. So, I eventually flunked out of college and was working at Blockbuster Video. And one day, it was 2 consecutive days it started. A friend of mine, Jason, who I went to high school with, came into the store and looked at me, and I was embarrassed because I was working at Blockbuster, and he's like, "What are you doing working at Blockbuster? You were supposed to be X, Y, and Z. You were supposed to do all this great stuff." And it was clear. It was just like, "Come on, man." So Jason left, and the next day, some gentleman. Do you remember that movie Clerks?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Remember the scene where this guy comes up with something obscure? Do you remember this one scene about this one movie? And the guy's like, "Yeah, I know that movie." Well,
Yep.
I was that guy. So this
Yeah.
gentleman walks in and says, he looked like Morris Day. He's like in a pimp suit and everything. So he walks up and says, "Hey, man, do you know this movie about this one girl? She turns into an alien and just starts eating dudes." I was just like, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, it's Speckies." And I'm just like, "Sir, do you mean species?" He's like, "Yeah."
That's the
And
one.
so, so at that point, I was like, I can't.
Name
So
tag off,
yeah,
please.
so I joined the Navy the next day. I went down to the recruiter's office and said, "Okay, I'm going to be a SEAL, and what do I need to do?" And they happily signed me up. That was in June, and 4 weeks later, on July 17th, I was in Great Lakes, first day of boot camp. And even though Navy boot camp wasn't hard per se, it was still a transition point. So, you're getting yelled at, which in sports you're getting yelled at all the time. But it was a challenge for the first couple of days. But a week later, we get to explore Navy jobs, and the SEAL motivator came in, and it's like, all right, here's a video I want you to watch. And it had been years, 5 years since I'd seen the first time I'd seen the Be Someone Special video. I had to watch it 1,000 times.
Sure.
But when I watched it again, the same inferno that was sparked back then lit up again. I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. And took the test the first time. And George, I'd never done pull-ups before. I was a big, strong kid. I was like, how hard can pull-ups be? So I did the swim. Push-ups are fine. Sit-ups are fine. I jump up on that bar and I get three of the ugliest pull-ups anybody's ever seen. And it was a good wake-up call because I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for what I'm here to do. So every night, I would sneak in after lights out. I would sneak into the bathroom and just practice pull-ups because I was
But
on a timeline now because
and
I had four.
you were wrapping, this was like metal cutting, like this wasn't
Yeah, yeah.
it wasn't a pull-up bar. You had to like
No,
wrap it with towels to make
yeah,
sure, and you were doing this in the dead of night so no one else knew. But you
right.
had a time where you had to go, and then it was 10 pull-ups you had to complete in perfect form, was it? Or 8 or something?
It was 8, but the
Okay,
goal was to get from where I was to
right.
10.
So how long did you have to work on that?
4 weeks.
Okay, 4 weeks. Got it.
Yeah. So each night, and I didn't put it together, but each night, if a student gets up, you have somebody on watch, and they would say student got up at 10 o'clock and was in the bath. And so there was a log of it. So, um, the second test is coming up. So I got up to 10, but I'm like, well, I'm at 10, but this is in a vacuum. I haven't done all the other stuff. So
Right before, yeah, because you have to do all the other tests
yeah, yeah,
leading up to that, right? Because your
yeah.
body's going to be fatigued, right?
Yep. Everything's to failure. So you have to do your push-ups until you can't do anymore.
Got it.
So I'm like, I got 10, but I did the math in my head. I was like, eight's going to be hard. But I took a break the day before and repeat. So did the swim, got better on the swim, did better on push-ups, did better on everything. And then I got to the pull-ups and 1, 2, 3, 4 strong, right? 5, I'm like, this is five's not as pretty, but I still got it. 6, 7, and then it came to 8. And I don't know to this day if I would have gotten 8, but I wasn't going to risk it. So I was 90% there, right? And like my chin, the bars here, and my chin is like 2 inches from getting number 8. And somebody got the instructor's attention. It's like, hey, and the instructor looked over. And in that second, I was like, okay, morals be damned. I'm either gonna maybe get this next one, or if I pull my chin up, I'm definitely gonna get it. So I did the little up and
Hmm.
pulled myself up. And at that same, as I pulled up, he looked at me and our eyes were like, he's like, I know you just cheated. And I'm like, I know that but I'm never gonna admit it. So
Because you had another guy, there's another guy who called out 8. He's like
yeah,
counting, so he's like
yep,
he's done it, and then
yep. Because he was behind me, so he didn't see.
okay, gotcha. Now I see the room. I see it.
Yeah, yeah. So he didn't see the extracurriculars that I took, the extra measures that I took. So he counted out 8, and the instructor's like, you bastard. But I was like, who cares? I did 8.
He called it. Yep,
He called it. So
it's
I
official.
actually so I didn't get number 9, but I knew I passed, right?
Yep.
And he's like, don't get cocky because you still have the run to do. But I was like, I was a runner.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so I smoked the run, and he pulls me over. He's like, hey, Greene, look, man, that's the ugliest pull up I've ever seen, and I know what happened. He's like, but your instructors had come in and said, hey, this kid's been going. He sneaks out and he just goes and does pull ups. So like he's been working his balls off
Yeah.
to get 8 pull ups, and the instructor staff was like, okay, I can respect that.
Yeah, that
So he's
counts
like,
for a lot.
yeah, yeah. So he's like, all right, Greene, just go down to A school, work on your pull-ups, and when you get to buds, just work on your pull-ups. I was like, yes, sir.
Because you're gonna have to
And
do that all again in buds,
mhm.
right? And was it still
uh,
8 or was it more than?
well, I mean, it was still 8. That was the
Yeah.
minimum, but you have to go.
But you have buds for
Yeah. So I took the test again in A school, but I'd gotten through that mental block. So the pull-ups were no longer an issue. So the next time I took it, I think I did like 15 pull-ups or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It was easy. So then when I got to buds, same thing. But the interesting thing about buds was the second I crossed the quarter deck and I was at buds, that image of my dad when I was at 9 is like, hey, we don't quit stuff around here. So once I got there, quitting wasn't an option.
Yeah.
So no matter what, so I was like, well, you can't quit now that you're here. And so um got there and I wasn't prepared for what buds was, because you're never in seal shape. You just
Right.
you're in shape, but what you're getting ready to get into. So I struggled the first couple of weeks. And when I'm struggling, I just ask questions because I need to make it fit in ways that I learn. So I was like, instructor, how do I do more pull-ups or how do I do more push-ups? How do I get better? Like, Greene, please shut up. You're doing fine. And buds is hard and this just sucks, but you're fine. And I didn't believe him. And one day we were doing a conditioning run and it was hot that day. And I had a heat injury and I had to go to the infirmary. So people fake injuries all the time. So
Sure.
they took a thermometer. So instead of doing under the tongue thermometer, like we're gonna make this guy work for it. So they gave me the other temperature reading,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't move a muscle. And they're like, "Whoa, this kid's
Yeah,
okay.
he's
This
not
kid's hurt."
fighting it. I think he
Right,
may
right.
be
Yeah,
hurting. Yeah.
this kid might be hurt. So they gave me 24 hours off. The instructor staff got in trouble because they didn't give us enough water. And instructor Gecko's like, "All right, Greene, every time I see you, you're going to be wet inside and out." And I was like, he's like, "That means every time I see you, you're going to empty your canteen and then you're going to go
Hit
get
the
wet."
ocean. Yeah.
I was like, "All right, that's fair." But Senior Chief Mink he was just one of those guys who was just kind of in the background, always watching. So I was like, "Greene, get over here." And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he looked around and he's like, "Hey, everybody I give this bullfrog to graduates from buds." And he's like, "If you ever tell anybody I gave this to you, I'm going to deny it." So he looks around again. He slips me the bullfrog. He's like, "No, get out of here."
And for those who don't know, that's like Bullfrog is a really high-end sunscreen at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So he gave me the bullfrog. And for some reason, that was the last push that I needed. It was like Senior Chief Mink, who was a plank owner at Dev Group. He's like, "You got what it takes. I got faith in you. So you're good." And from then on, I was like, okay, so I know I'm not going to quit. Physically and mentally, I'm good. So now what am I doing? I'm working out in San Diego with my buddies on the beach. So then it just became, how do I break this thing up into chunks that I could manage? Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of people they take buds in the 6 month entirety, right? They're like, "Oh man, I can't do this for 6 months, or I can't do this for however long." And I was just like, well, wait a second. Every 4 hours, my stomach starts growling. And then soon after that, we break for lunch or break for chow. And I was like, well, I can do anything for 4 hours. And once my stomach starts growling, this stuff's almost over. So then instead of breaking it up into 6 months or a day at a time, it's just 4 hour increments, which I was like, well, I can do anything for 4 hours at a time. So then the,
Manageable.
it was manageable. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so then I just had a great time. And you push past all your limits all the time. And the cool thing about buds is um, it's a selection course. So you're not learning a whole lot. It's just, hey, do you have what it takes to earn the right to become a SEAL? And so turns out that I did, and I was able to thrive in that environment. And at the end of it, 166 of us started, and 18 of us graduated. So, I had earned the right to go on to the next level of trying to become a SEAL. So it was an awesome experience. But one of the things that was kind of a life changer was when I was going through Hell Week. It's 120 hours, starts on Sunday, ends on Friday, and they schedule 3 hours of sleep. But after it was over, I looked at one of my instructors like, "Hey, instructor, I'm trying to figure something out." He's like, "Yeah, Greene, what's up?" I was like, "I don't feel any different." I was like, I thought I was going to open up my shirt. There's going to be an S on it. A cape's going to appear and I could just, fly around all over the place. It's like, yeah. And he's like, well, buds is not for you. Like whatever your life looked like before, you've been a SEAL your whole life.
Hmm.
Buds is to weed out the people who aren't SEALs.
Right.
And I was like, huh, okay. So I've always been this awesome. He's just like, yes.
Don't let it get to your head, Mark.
He was like,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. But
So
yeah.
he's like, get out of here. So then I was like, okay, this is what for whatever reason, this is what I was supposed to do. And from then on, it's just like these small points in time that were a catalyst for staying motivated and to get to the next step. And that's pretty much been the story of my life, is that right when I needed it, somebody showed up and was like, hey, you're stalling a little bit, but you're on the right path. So, keep going.
You talked about a story too, where it was one of these moments that was kind of a catalyst of you finally understood when someone what it means to like be true to your word. And
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, and forgive me for the timeline because I can't really remember. Was that during Hell Week where you guys had done this race, and then if you can kind of set that up, I know you know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you could talk about that story too, because that was a very pivotal moment where you kind of were like, aha, I get this
Mm-hmm.
to this other level. So yeah, was that during Hell Week? And then if it wasn't, even if you can just pivot into that, I'd love to hear
Yeah.
that story.
So Thursday of Hell Week, you do what's called Around the World,
Hmm.
and it takes about 12 hours. And, we were boat crew number one, biggest, strongest guys, and we were just getting our butts kicked by everybody. So the instructors have like, what in the hell is going on? You are our guys, right? You guys are getting your butts kicked. So he's like, all right, if you guys win Around the World, then you guys get to sleep until the last boat crew comes in. We're just like, all right. So we took off, right? That's all we needed. And we were beating everybody. And we finish up, and I'm spooning up with a guy named Tim, 6'4", 250 pounds of heat. This dude he was just a furnace, right?
Right.
And so we're all snuggled up under the boat, and I hear Instructor Geck is like, Greene, get over here. And bad word, bad word, bad
Yeah.
word. So I
Yeah.
get up, and he's like, hey, what's the rule? Get it wet inside and out. And it was the Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader moment, right? So I look at the water, and I look at Instructor Gecka, look back at the water, look at him again. I was like, absolutely not. He's like, what did you just say? And I went into a full blown temper tantrum, like stomping my feet, like, you told me that we get to sleep, and damn it, I'm going to sleep. And the instructor said, I was like, okay, I've never seen this before. What's happening? So the
Everyone
chief,
starts coming in. Yeah.
yeah, they're like, what in the world's going on? And Chief shows up, and I was like, Chief shows up, you've done everything wrong. He's like, what, Greene, what the hell's going on around here? And again, I was like, well, he told me I get to go to sleep, and I'm not. He's just like, I was asleep, and he woke me up, something to something to that effect. And Chief was like, well, Mike, is that what you told him? He's like, yeah, Chief, that's what I told him. He's like, well, hey man, this is the SEAL teams. We keep our word around here. Greene, go back to bed. And in the moment, I hadn't slept for days. And
Right.
then he's just like, I was like, well, we keep our word around here. That means something. But in the meantime, I was like, Tim, I'm on my way back.
Save me a spot. Yeah.
Yeah. But, that was such a great moment because I learned what the teams were all about. Like in the midst of all the chaos of whatever you're doing, there's a code and honor around here that you keep your word around here, no matter what. And I was like, okay, I'm in the right place
Yeah.
because it aligns with my morals and you're going to combat, but you know, you got to keep your word around here. And that was such a great lesson learned from it went from, hey, you're disobeying what the instructor said, but what's even more important is that he gave you his word, and we're at the point of breaking that, and we can't have that happen. So it's just like, okay, yeah, all right, I'm in the right spot.
Back to cuddle time. Yeah.
Yeah, but hey,
Stay
more
warm.
importantly,
Get some sleep.
much more importantly, was Tim was back there just waiting for me. It was awesome. Best night of sleep I've ever gotten.
No, you mentioned that. I can only imagine, especially after not having much. And so you get done with buds, and then you said that there's like that next level before you then become a SEAL. Walk
Mhm.
me through that. Like, okay, you're out of buds, and then what happens next?
So you go to what's called SEAL qualification training. So it's 6 months, but you've earned the right? You've physically and mentally made it through the selection process, and now it's time to learn your actual job. So it's not as physically demanding, as Buds was, but mentally, like, okay, you by the time you get out of here, you have to be able you're going to be able to show up in the platoon and at least know what the heck you're doing. So when that happened, it's real now. So you're working with other SEALs, and they're like, if you don't make the cut, it's because you didn't have the attributes that you needed, and I've refused to work with you. So um, getting through that was a big deal. But so it's 6 months long, and you're really learning about becoming a SEAL, and it was challenging, but it was fun, and you're learning at a really high level, and everything that you learn in Buds, all the attributes you need for Buds, directly translates to what you're learning in SQT, which then translates to what you're going to do in a platoon, which translates to what you're going to do downrange.
Right.
So, but yeah, it was a fantastic experience.
Dude, so then you qualify, you pass, you're officially in, and then what does that look like? Because then there's times you went in and you were taking school, you have a family there. I mean, there's a lot going on and in and around your time too. And then when you were going overseas, so if you wouldn't mind maybe just taking a minute too and kind of setting that up, because I think that it plays a big part too in a different level of transitions later on in your life of what
Mhm.
you're going on in your family there too.
So yeah, so you're trying to manage everything, right? And then you feel like you're falling behind, and then all of a sudden you throw uh, a kid's on the way, and you're still having to learn, and then you're looking forward to deploying for the first time. So all that stuff comes in, and is you have to figure it out, and you have to manage it, and then you have to try to be great at everything. Mainly your job, but for me, I took that challenge. I was like, okay, I need to be a great SEAL. I need to be a great husband. I need to be a great father. And, you have to make sacrifices at that point. So instead of, working, staying after hours and connecting with the guys, like, hey guys, my daughter's got, I got a kid to take care of. And the
Yeah.
guys were like, hey man, I get it. So they were, the SEAL teams are very supportive, and that if you're not doing something productive at work, do it, be away from work. So that really gave me some time to adjust to one, being a parent to a daughter. And one of my favorite moments with my daughter was when she was first born. I thought that, say, oh my God, this is just be this wonderful experience, this beautiful kid, right? So she shows up, and I'm just like, oh God, put it back. It's just an atrocious looking thing. But a couple hours later, she was beautiful, right?
Right, right. Clean it up, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we go home, and then all of a sudden you realize you're not useful in this situation because she doesn't need you. She needs her mom for everything. And every time you try to pick her up, you have this beard and it's scruffy, and it scratches her. So for about 2 months, I was just kind of like, well, this sucks because this parenting thing's not. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, you
And
didn't have that
then
emotional connection.
right, right. So one day I walked in the door, and even though she didn't respond every time I'd come in, I'd say, "Hey, Riley," and she'd either wouldn't pay attention or she'd look at me. I was like, "Yeah, whatever." But one day, I think she was 2 months old, 2 or 3 months old, and I walked in the door and said, "Hey, Riley," and she looked at me and smiled, and I was like, "Oh, she must have to fart or something." so, I needed to go back out to the car, came back and did the same thing and said, "Hey, Riley." And she looked at me again and smiled. I was like, wait a second. So I did it the third time, and she looked at me again and smiled. And I was like, she knows who I am. And that's when the floodgates open. I was just like, she's amazing. She's beautiful. She's wonderful. All the things that you expect to be as a parent. Once the connection was made, it was just like, best thing ever.
Yeah.
So, but then it became really challenging to focus so much on your SEAL job because you have this even more important job to do at home. Um, so I learned a lot, but that was a big transition point too, because, you have to, meet expectations in two different places that are equally important.
Sure.
You're so, but it was great. I had 4 kids, and each experience was the same. Just seeing how atrocious they look at first, and then but then how great they are, once life happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were great.
So when you were talking about those times where you're you know at the daytime you're in training, like are there particular set hours that you're here on base and then you're going home, or I mean maybe you're still living on base with the family, but the idea of like that separation too, or is there multiple days you're here training and then you're going there? Like what does that look like before that first deployment as far as like that kind of transitional timeline of balancing that?
Well, they set it up. It's pretty much set up like a workup. So some days you're training local, and then some days for really important blocks like land warfare or something,
Mhm.
you go out to the desert for 3 weeks. So you don't have any contact at home. So diving was local, some of the shooting stuff was local, but then we would go out to the mountains and do some shooting stuff, and then we go out to the desert to do land warfare. So they really did a great job of setting it up as if this is what your workup's going to look like.
Yep.
You're going to be home sometimes, and then you're going to be away for weeks at a time or months at a time. So, you just had to figure out. So they usually started off at 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock. You do your 2 hour PT in the morning, and then you get after learning, your job. But it was really cool because a lot of the things you were doing, I was a poor kid from Ohio, all of a sudden you're learning special operations, at the highest level. And you're like, wow, this is awesome. And but then you go home exhausted, but then you're energized when you see your kid.
Right. Right.
And yeah, so but you never really get a break. So after a couple months, you're like 6 months of training, like, oof, all right, I've learned my SEAL stuff, and I'm kind of pretty good as a dad. And then the workup starts, and it just ramps up higher. And so, but you get the basics. It's really just you learn the basics, and if something happened, you are effective in a platoon on the battlefield. But you're the last resort because you know the least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, but prior to that first deployment, and I'm just trying to thread this timeline too. Was that when you were approached and quote unquote invited to sniper school, or was this after a series of deployments and then you came back and then that opportunity arose?
No, this is after my first deployment.
Okay, so then
So
where was your first deployment?
we went to the Pacific, and so
Okay.
we were, in the Pacific theater. They still have Vietnam era,
Hmm.
World War II era stuff that they have to cover in that region to make sure that the peace is kept. So we would do, exercise, but we're always prepping for a phone call happens and, you guys got to go to work. So that was a learning experience. Unfortunately, there weren't a whole lot of opportunities to fight back then. So we did the mission that was available, and I, came home and was going through my gear, and I was like, okay, professional development, you go through pro dev. They give you about 6 months to go to schools and, learn another skill set and just to reconnect with your family because you've been away for 6 months.
Sure.
So I'm walking on the grinder, minding my own business, happy as I could be. And I hear some voice say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And me, I was like, "Hey, I just got back from deployment, just hanging out." He's like, "Go pack your stuff. You're going to sniper school." I was like sniper school, like Marine Corps or SEAL sniper school. And he's like, "Pack your stuff. We have one body, and you're it." And sniper school starts today, and it's a 10-week course. So then I have to say, "Hey, got some bad news at the home front." Like, I'm going to sniper school
Can
for
only imagine how that went
it
for you.
wasn't pretty.
Oh my goodness. Which is
Yeah.
the life that you signed up
Yeah.
for as a
Yeah. I
wife,
signed
but
up
it
for it.
still doesn't make it easy. Right. Right.
Right. Right. So sniper school was awful. It's a 10-week stress course, and it sucks. But, the sniper job is unique.
Yeah.
You do everything as a team, you're rolling deep in a 16-man platoon. Then all of a sudden you're like, hey, it's great you have this skill set of being, direct action guy. But now we're going to have to train you to go, you and your sniper buddy are going to have to go in deep behind enemy lines, do some observations, and most likely do some shooting. but the shooting part is probably the last thing, the last resort, you know. So it's a 10-week stress course. And like I said, it sucks. But you really learn the skill set. The art of sniping is completely different skill set. And it's got to be as challenging it is because, you know, when you get dropped off, you have to be your own fighting force. You have to know the radios, you have to know the weapon systems, you have to know land navigation. And then let's say you have to take a shot, you also have to know how to, you only get one shot usually.
Yeah.
So they're training you like, hey, dude, this guy's 500, 800 yards away. What's the wind doing?
What's the
You got one
spin
job.
drift? What's the
Yep.
ballistics? Yeah,
Yep.
all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's got to be as arduous as it is because
For a
it's
reason.
a skill set that you could change the tone of a battle with well placed shots
Yeah.
or getting deep behind enemy lines where you're not expected, getting intel that it's hard to get and it's in real time. So but the understanding of that was clear. But again, the way I work, I was like, I don't understand this very important job that I now have to do. So I bugged the crap out of the instructor staff. And like before in Buzz, they're like, Green, just go away. Um, so it was basically the same way. I was like, so how do I take this shot, or how do I do this, or how do I get better at this? Because the way I process things, like what's my deficiency and how do I close that gap? And so it was like, how do I do this better? How do I do this? And I was just bugging the instructor staff and finally like, go away. That's an order. I was like, all right. But made it through the shooting portion, but did not make it through the stalking portion, which is the sneaking around stuff, which is really important. And the reason I didn't do well on that one because they didn't teach you what to do. They was like, here's how you make your gun, and here's the target. Do all these different skill sets, and you're graded for grades the next day. And I didn't understand the concept of it. So, for me, learning that way, I just don't learn very well that way. But the second time I went through, graduated, and it was fine. But the best gift that I was ever given was I got to go teach sniper school for a year.
Right.
And that was awesome because everything I didn't, I every all the lessons I learned that I had as a student that I was like, man, I wish this could be better. That taught it completely different on the East Coast. And it was, hey, we're going to teach you step by step as if you're a child, and then we're going to let you go, and then you're going to start getting graded. So I just spent all the time with my students. I answered every question, be it 2 in the morning or, after hours. It was like, you got a question, I'm here. And the coolest thing was for my students to fire me. And so it was, you know, you're very hands on for the first probably 4 to 5 weeks. And then they're starting to figure it out. And then you get on the stalking field, and then they're in their infancy again. But one day the light bulb comes on. You can tell
Yeah.
when it comes on. And one day they just look at you and say, hey, Mark, I got it. Best day ever, because I've just been fired because I've done my job well enough for them to say, Mark, you've done what you're supposed to do. Teach me this thing. Now I need to take the next step and learn on my own. And so they fired me, and it was the best day ever. To watch the light bulb come on was so rewarding.
Well, and you talk about too the idea of like leadership, and when you became an officer and then having your platoon, and how that most important thing is like when people stop asking questions and they stop coming to you, then that's when you failed as a leader. Because if you
Yeah.
can be there, but that other advancement of being a leader is whenever they don't need it anymore because you've imparted your knowledge and that they're
Mhm.
picking it up on their own, or they're taking that to that next level of whatever it is they're doing on their trajectory. But I think that's a huge, you those kind of examples that you talked about of leadership. And I want to go back into your idea of like when, or your what you talk about in the book of when you were trying to then apply to, become an officer, there was some roadblocks in your way that were by the people you would think would be there to support you and wanting to see you move forward.
Hmm.
And that was a very there were some big challenges, and you kind of you figured out a way to work around that. And if just to kind of lay it out there too, at first you had someone had graded you on part of the scoring system,
Hmm.
and the guy who was reviewing it had said, I didn't put this grade, I put a 10. Why is it saying an
Yeah.
8? So someone had gone in and changed your grading criteria in order to try to prevent you from making that next step. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a black chief. And, everybody who had supported me, I mean, let's not kid around. There are very few black SEALs.
Right.
Not because it's not inclusive. It's just, it's culturally, you can't take a kid who's never seen a pool before, let alone the ocean, and say, hey, I know you never swam before, but you're gonna do 2 mile swims in the ocean with sharks and stuff, and you know, just culturally it didn't fit. It's like, hey, I'll go to the Army, or I'll go to the Marines, or go to the Air Force. But to do to drop a black kid into that environment, it's not that the capability is not there. It's just the exposure to the environment's not there. So, but everybody in the SEAL teams was so supportive. So when they heard that I was going to apply to be an officer, they were, hey, how can I help?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is awesome. So the gentleman who I had my board with, who did my interviews, they all gave me 10 out of 10. It's like, hey, Mark, you did a great job. So then you take it to the admin person who's not from the SEAL community, and he had just had some animosity, smiled to my face, but then, package is all done and it's time to submit. And I go to the chief, and I didn't know that Rosie gave me a 10. But you have to take it back to your interviewers, and they have to review it.
Right.
So, if I hadn't taken it back to Rosie, the commander who had written it, and he hadn't picked it up, he's like, if you didn't bring this back to me and I didn't review it, it would have gone up as an 8 out of 10. And they would have said, yeah, he's not qualified. So, and the chief knew that 1 8 would torpedo my whole officer career.
Well, and that wasn't even the only setback. Then there was the idea of sending the package in for official review. And was that the same chief who was a part of that? Is a different person, right?
I was in San Diego for that event, but then I was in Virginia here at the sniper school, and meeting with the guy there. I just didn't have a good feeling. And I was like, hey, sir, OCS package is coming up, and I need you to mail this out for me. And there was something about that what I'd learned from my other experience. I'm like, something's just not quite right. And so I would go in every couple of weeks and, hey, sir, did you mail off the package? Oh, Green, yeah, we got plenty of time. But he would not let me access my package. So he was on leave, and I went to the other admin and was like, hey, I need to put something in my package. He grabbed it for me. So I made a copy of it, the entire thing, put the original back, and mailed off the copy in time. So I get my package sent off, and he comes back from leave, and I was like, hey, sir, did you get my package sent off? And he's like, oh man, I missed the date. I was on leave. And I was like, yeah, I figured. So I made a copy of the package and mailed it off. And it was received on time. And instead of him being like, oh man, great for taking care of your own career, he was like, he was mad because I went around his back and did his job for him, and then called him out on it. And, he was pissed. And I was so shocked that there were people out there who went out of their way to torpedo your career and make sure that you don't succeed. And an old master chief had said, he's like, hey, Mark, be careful when you go to be an officer, because it's a different set of rules. So I thought it would be from my officer peers. And it was not that. It was people who were supposed to look out for me, and they chose to torpedo me twice.
Well,
It was amazing.
that just what you had to overcome to be able to the internal struggles of this organization that you had thought was this, total, brotherhood and this family too, to have that from the inside, I'm sure must have been very painful, but it also, it seems like the way that you have always adapted, overcome, you just kind of realized, okay, this is what I have to do to get this
Mm-hmm.
shit plugged in and make sure it's turned in on time, and your own accountability of yourself. And I was wondering, do you think that he was more pissed that you kind of jumped the shark there and kind of went over his head, or do you think that he did not want you to succeed?
He did. He definitely didn't want
Okay,
me to succeed.
got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
but the redeeming part of it was not internal to the SEAL teams.
Yep.
It was somebody who was an outsider, for lack of a better term. So it was like, well, at least my brothers in the SEAL teams didn't stop this from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there was a couple times in your book that you talk about where there is almost a stop of your life. There's like two crazy, I mean, near death experiences I mean, they're nuts. And I'd love for you to maybe just touch on those two, because they were monumental, and I don't know if there was a lot of men who could have survived what you survived, not just once, but twice. So
Yeah.
if you can maybe talk about the helicopter trip and what happened with that first one, and what, kind of, if you can maybe set that up. I don't want to spend too long on it because I want people to dive in, but I think they're just fascinating stories, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So it was our first platoon, and we were doing visit board search and seizure, VBSS. And you can do it from the water, from a boat, or you can do it from a helicopter. And we were doing it from the helicopter. And, you know, everything was going at 100 miles an hour in my head because it was all new. And gentleman walks in, he's like, "Hey, I'm the pilot of HS2. I'm the best pilot in the squadron. I'm going to take care of you guys." So I'm like, okay. I mean,
Oh, we got the best. Yeah.
I got Maverick in the helicopter, you know? so, um, so we do a crawl, walk, run, which would mean, hey, we meet the pilots, we do a walkthrough, and then we do it for real. But it's like during the daytime, and like it was Lake Pacifica that day. So during the daytime, we did the first run. I mean, everything was picture perfect. So I was like, okay, that was awesome. The pilots as advertised, and let's do this at night. So we get all our gear ready for the night, but then the sea state starts to turn up. And we were right on the verge of, for safety reasons, we weren't going to be able to do it. But we were just inside the threshold, so we loaded up and took off, right? And I could see why the pilot was nervous on the platform, because you have to put 8 dudes on basically an 8x10 space, because there are cranes going everywhere and the ship's doing like this, and they have to maintain station and the ship's moving. So I get it. It was a tough
Yeah.
platform.
And all at night.
All at night.
Right.
And so the pilots come in, and the first 8 guys go down, and I'm looking at the pilot, and he's like white knuckled on this thing, literally, and so we get on station, and 6 guys go down the rope, and the air crewman says, "All right, so we have 2 more." The pilot thought he said no more, and 7th guy goes down, and I'm going down full speed, and all of a sudden the helicopter's taking off.
No,
And I'm like,
Maverick, no.
yeah, I'm just like, where's the ship going? so, so I'm going down full speed, and your hands are your brakes.
Right.
So I get down to I may have 6 inches of rope left, right? So I'm trying to climb up so I can do they taught us how to stand on a rope when we were buds. So I was trying to do my rope stand, and I look up, and I don't know if a gust of wind hit the helicopter or what happened, but this big whip in the line's coming down, and I'm looking at it. I'm just like, oh, this is bad. And I
I
knew I
know
couldn't
what's
hang
about to
on.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So snaps me off, and I had to fall at least 100 feet with all my gear on. And the first thing I thought was, why am I all wet? Because it just didn't compute. It's like, I'm supposed to be on the deck of a ship. Now I'm not only on the deck of a ship, I'm in the middle of the ocean. And what's
The
going on?
ship's way over there, right?
Yeah, yeah. So they don't realize I'm gone for
Yeah,
a
because
few
he had
minutes.
started to fly off like
Yeah,
as
yeah,
if no one was there. So
yeah.
he's going away. So now
Mhm.
you're way off from where you should be.
Yeah. So the ship's going one way, the current's going the other way, and I'm just like, okay. So I pop my life vest, but it's only rated for a guy who's 160 pounds.
And
With
you're like
all my
225 at this time, right?
Well, that's just what I weigh, but then with all body armor and all the other
Sure.
stuff, I'm like 250,
Yeah.
and I start to sink. I'm like, oh, this is bad. So then I turn on my strobe light and I hear this disgusting zzz, 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 and it's
Oh,
shorted out, and the ship's still going away, but they realize I'm gone, right? Um, but the waves are so big that I'm sucking down a bunch of salt water.
right.
So I'm like, okay, I got to survive. So I turned away, um, and then I just started floating out to sea. And the most disgusting sound I've ever heard was they do rescue in a figure eight. So the helicopter does a
Yep.
figure eight. So I was on the outside of the figure eight.
Ooh.
And the worst thing I'd ever heard was the helicopter. I could see it, but I was invisible.
Mhm.
And the worst sound I'd ever heard was the helicopter flying away, heading back the other way. Then I knew
So,
they couldn't see me.
but then at this time, you got
Mhm.
equipment failure, but
Yep.
then you had the wherewithal because you talk about like how, and I think it's part of the training too, but maybe it's part of who you are as well, of this idea of like this never give up, this attitude that your dad put in play, and this ethos of who it is to be a green. But then you also got your formal training. You were surprisingly calm, and you said you went and took the next thing, which was getting an old headlamp, right?
I had a whole old headlamp that I always carried a bunch of stuff, and my teammates always made fun of me. It's like, oh, nobody uses that stuff. But I packed it anyway.
Two is one
And,
and one is none, right?
right. So I start the panic process because I'm sinking.
Yeah,
And then I remember the safety briefs like, hey, this is a great white breeding ground where we are
of course.
in between Catalina Island.
Just stay
between
calm, right?
yeah, hey. So between Catalina, California and San Clemente Island, this corridor is a great white breeding ground. And I'm flapping around like, oh, the sharks are like, well, something just arrived for lunch. So let me go check that
Right.
out. So I'm like, okay, you have to stay calm. All right. Figure this out, calm down. So I stop and I'm trying to get my bearings, but I don't have a compass. So if I start swimming north, then I'm just going to swim up to Alaska or south down to Mexico. So it's like, I don't know where I'm going. So I get my fins on and I'm getting ready to put my fins on and just start swimming. Um, and one of the guys in the platoon had happened to steal a one of the Gen 1 night vision scopes.
This is John, right?
John, yeah.
Yeah.
And I happened to put my headlamp back on just for the mere fact that somebody might see it before I hype out and die and drown. And all of a sudden I hear the helicopter again. I was like, well, it sounds like it's getting closer. So let me turn back around. And so a few minutes later, the helicopter, you know, I see the helicopter and they see me. And I'm just like, oh, there's no way that they found me. And the rescue swimmer jumps in and they have a script like, hey, we're here to get you out. And, he's going through a script. I'm like, hey, man, I get it. Can you just get me out of the water? He's like, oh, yeah, 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 man, no problem. And now we're just having a conversation, and he puts the ring around me and hoists me up. But I had been out there for like 45 minutes, and I was hypothermic, and
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I only had maybe 30 minutes left before I would have passed out
Yeah.
I would have succumbed to hypothermia, and so they take me back to the carrier, right, because it's a medical emergency, and they stop all air operations, right, which is a big deal for a carrier. And I had a George Costanza moment. So they had to cut off all my they had to cut off all my gear, and the entire flight deck is looking right at this guy who's getting wheeled off. And I remember thinking, it's like, it's cold out. This
It's
is
cold
not
out. It's
this is
not how it
not
normally
representative.
is. Full exposure.
Yeah. So I'm like,
They're like,
oh
this
man.
guy's not faking it. We've given them
Yeah.
the thermometer. Now
Yeah.
he's stripped naked and everyone's
Yeah.
what? Oh my God.
Just, this is not representative, but
No.
so so they get me into the to medical and get me heated up, and then all of a sudden these two gentlemen walk in, and I didn't have a filter back, I was young. And so gentleman walks in and is like, son, what happened? I was like, well, that shitty pilot, whoever he was, put me in the drink and I almost died out there. And everybody in medical was like, uh-oh. And then the gentleman's like, okay, son, you take care. And Corman comes up, I was like, who is that? It's like, that was the pilot. I was like, huh, all right. So I'm sure that pilot's like, I hate that Mark Greene. I hate that Bob Barker,
That son of a.
So yeah, but I mean, all the training that they put you through is for a reason. Second phase pool comp or Hell Week or whatever, you know, survival stuff in the water. You're so comfortable in the water that you think through every problem. And so when the oh shit happened, it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
It's just how long do you stay in that state?
Yeah.
And I stayed in that state for like 3 seconds and like, all right, what do I got? Like,
Adapt,
okay, so
overcome. What do we
yeah.
do? Right. Well, and
So
you talk about it on your second one too, like as if that wasn't experience enough, and just kind of said too, you get knocked over, you're now underwater, but you kind of got sucked in this training mission, and now you're getting vacuumed out, and because you have no idea which way's up at this point too, right? And how did
well,
that? How did that?
so we're September 11th. It happened. This is our second deployment. September 11th happened. We're on the USS Germantown heading towards Jakarta, Indonesia, because um the fear was the population was going to overthrow the embassy.
That's right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're steaming down to Jakarta and we're prepping for the MEO that we're getting ready to do. We're going to evacuate members of the embassy. So we're getting our boats out and all this stuff, and they flood the well deck and then they can launch ships that way, ships and boats from the main amphib. So we're isolated from the crew because the captain of the ship's like, you fools are not polluting my sailors with all your SEAL stuff, right? so finally we emerge and we're training for our stuff, and everybody's on the fantail like, oh, the SEALs are out. So one of the young guys was hot dogging for the crowd, and he's missing the back of the ship for us to recover on. And we're all like, hey, stupid. And he finally corrects. And we're maybe 5-10 feet away from um, recovering on the deck of the ship. Well, I fall over the side into the water and I get caught in the prop wash. So I go from the surface to 30 feet like that, almost instantly. And all of a sudden, only way I knew it was up because I could see some sunlight,
Okay.
and it felt like these hands were just pushing me down. So I couldn't move. I was trying to go up to the surface, but then I was like, we can't go to the surface because you're under the props.
Right.
So as calm as I've ever been, like I'm sitting in the seat right now, I lean back like this, sit in my underwater chair, and I was like, I'm so mad. I'm so mad right now.
I don't want to die like this.
Yeah.
Damn it.
So I refuse to die on that one.
Yeah.
So
Been here before.
But it's the calmest I've ever been, I think. And I'm just like, okay, try to swim up. So I try to swim up. Hands are still pushing me down. And I look down at my life vest because if I pop my life vest, I'm light enough to where it'll shoot me to the surface at this
Yeah.
point. So I'm like, well, if I pop my life vest, then I could get caught in the props. So don't pull your life vest yet. So I just sit back in my seat. I was like, okay, I'm going to try this one more time. So I try to swim up again, nothing. And I'm like, give it a little bit more time. And if you don't get to go up, if you're still getting held down, then go ahead and pop your life. And I'm having this conversation in my head. So then I start to swim up and I'm starting to make headway. So finally, I make it to the surface. The ship is hundreds of yards away. and all of a sudden I pop up. The platoon thought I was dead.
Yeah.
The ship got overboard, and I'm like, yeah, this kid's, yeah, he's in the middle of the Pacific, dead.
Because this
And
isn't
I
20 seconds. This is like 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. I was under there for a few minutes. And they see me pop up and get in the boats, and they come and grab me. And one of my friends, Ryan's like, "Hey, man, you might need to reconsider this whole
You
water
could
thing."
cut this shit out. Yeah.
So, so that was, but that was my two of my. I have a third one I haven't talked. It'll be in the next book probably.
Oh, good. That was a
Yeah,
question. I was wondering if you're going to continue this awesome path.
yeah. I had three. I should have had my strikeout at three, but I survived the third one. Um, but I reverted back to my training again, and it was like, hey, stay calm, everything's fine, work your way through the problem, and there's going to be a solution to this. So just don't panic, and we'll figure this out. And that was my mentality going through the whole thing. The second time, the first time I had the panic, like the oh shit happened,
Yeah.
but this time I didn't. I was just like, it was, damn it, they're going to make so much fun of me after the end of this. So, but yeah, it was the training is so hard, and the selection process is so arduous for a reason,
Yeah.
because stuff like
Gotta
this
get,
happens.
gotta get the best of the
And
best,
yeah,
strongest mentally, physically,
yeah,
everything.
yep.
Well, and I hadn't said this yet, but thank you for your service and for all that you've done on behalf of our country, you and your brotherhood, man. It's incredible. Um, I was kind of thinking about, when you mentioned that there's a third one, I feel like, there's maybe even a 2.5 there in a sense, because whenever you left and you retired, you had your 20-year retirement, right? And
Hmm.
so it's a forced out at 20? Is that how that works? Or because you mentioned the 20-year and then but I was kind of curious about like what is that, what does retirement look like? Is there I'm unfamiliar. So how does that work in that sense?
So under normal conditions, 20 years is when you can retire.
Yep.
So the 20-year mark hit, and it's like, okay, I'm 44 years old. Um, am I'm going to be more marketable at 44 than 54, and then, promotion, I didn't get promoted. So I was just like, well, it's time to go. So, at 20 years, I retired, and it was so much more challenging and harder than I thought, because, um, there's prestige in being a SEAL, and
Yeah.
you're doing some of the hardest jobs, and you're at such a high level. And even though there's so much complaining and it's like, oh, this sucks, you really do. You can't do it for that long without loving it.
Yeah. You embrace
And
the suck and
yeah,
you're into, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it becomes who you are. And
Sure.
I didn't realize it had intertwined itself into the fiber of my being to the level it did. So on Friday, I was Mark, the Navy SEAL, and then Saturday, I was just Mark. The only thing I was shooting at that point were emails,
Yeah.
and it was like, what just happened? So, and that SEAL locker room was gone forever.
Right.
You're never going to recreate it. And that's the first time I realized I was tolerated but not welcome in the SEAL community anymore. Not because I wasn't welcome anymore, but they're still in the churn. They're still in the grind. They're still working towards a workup and then going deploying and fighting. So when I
Yeah. They're
would see them,
focusing on a different set of group and people. Right.
yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah, it was like, hey, thanks for your service, and you're always going to be part of this brotherhood, but we got to go, and you can't come along anymore. So I was just like, wow. But no shade or no animosity. That's just, the military is designed to thrive and accomplish its mission without you being there. They're recruiting and training your replacement all the time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something I took personal. It's like, oh, the Navy screwed me. It was just like, this is reality. So I had to figure out really quickly that, hey, man, you got to figure this out like you figured everything else out. And just opportunity after opportunity popped up. And the best opportunity I've had, I think to this date, went to a fundraiser in New York City and met this amazing gentleman, two gentlemen, Bill and Kent, and we were going to the venue, and initially I was going to be like, I'm tired, I just don't want to go. But something was like, you need to go to this thing. So we got to the venue, and I was talking to this gentleman. I was the first SEAL he'd ever talked to. So he was like, "Oh my God, your story's amazing." And I was just like, "Well, it's not really. I mean, everybody here, all the other SEALs have equally cool stories." But he's like, "You have to meet Bill." And I was like, "Okay." And Bill showed up, and we hit it off instantly. And he's like, "So Mark, you're been a SEAL for 20 years. You got your MBA. Um, what are you going to do next?" And I was like, "I have no idea." He's like, "Well, how do you feel about that?" I was like, "Bill, I'm terrified." And the look on his face was like, "Wait a second. You have all you're 6'2", good looking young man, very articulate. You have this great background and you are terrified." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Bill, I don't even know what I'm good at." And he was like, "Absolutely not." He gave me his card and said, "Okay, here's my card. I want to bring you out to LA. I want you to work with my staff and we're going to figure this out for you." And there was a twinge of anger because I was like, "Well, why would you do that?" You know, or I was defensive. I was like, "Why would
Yeah, defensive. Yeah.
I'm a complete stranger. Why'd you help me to this degree?" And he's like, "This is what we do." And he's like, "Take the card and hopefully I'll hear from you soon." So blew it off. And I was like, it's the old guy. And then there were no prospects. I was applying for the FBI and that was taking forever. No real prospects of Virginia Beach. And I happened to move a piece of clothing and there was his card. And I was like,
Hmm.
"Let me give this old guy a call." So I gave him a call and said, "Hey, Bill, I'm going to go ahead and take you up on your offer." He's like, "Great." It's like, you're going to get a couple emails and when can you come out? I was like, "I can come out tomorrow." He's like, "Well, I can't get you out here tomorrow, but we're going to get you out here next." So next week came out. So I went out to LA and met him again. It was the same, but I was defensive. I was like, something's going to happen. Like he's going to roofie me. I'm going to wake up in a bathtub with one kidney missing. I was like, "You bastard." I knew it. So that was my
All
mentality.
this and now, yeah.
And now one kidney. So, but he was gracious and, introduced me to all of his friends and said, "This is my guy and let's get him taken care of." So I just learned what I was good at and how it translated my skill set from the military, how it translated into the business world. And by Wednesday, he pulls me aside. It's like, "Mark, you have a great resume." And by this time, we had really connected. I was like, "Well, it's about damn time you read the thing. I've been out here for 3 days." He's like, well, I like to observe the person and
Yeah.
then look at their resume and see if they match. And then if they don't match, here are the corrections." Like, "But you pretty much captured it." He's like, "But I would be doing you a huge disservice if I brought you into my company and sat you behind a computer all day." He's like, "But
Yeah. Like real estate stuff, which is,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah." I was like, but if you want a job, you're part of the family now. You have a job if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
But just so you know, if what I do is not going to be the job for you. I was like, "Okay, well, I appreciate that." He's like, "I'm going to USC. Do you want to come?" I was like, USC? He's like, "Yeah." And so we hop in the car the next day and go to USC. And it was graduation week, which was, chaotic and awesome. So I take 2 steps out of the car and said, "Oh my God, Bill, this would be such a great place to work." He didn't say another word. I didn't say another word. We do the campus tour and I leave the next day. 2 weeks later, he called and said, "Hey, Mark, everything we talked about 2 weeks ago, forget it. I got you 4 interviews at USC." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "What am I interviewing for?" He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just don't suck." And he hung up.
Like,
So I get a suit and I get a USC colored tie and I show up
smart.
at the interview, right? And still not knowing what I'm interviewing for.
Yeah.
So I'm meet with Al and the 4 interviews that I had, and I was just telling stories because I was like, one, I'm not moving to LA. I mean, LA is weird, and
You got your family, other
families in
coast.
Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just going out here to practice interviewing, and for my real job that I'm going to take. So Al said, "Hey, Mark, when you're done with the other interviews, come on back." I was like, "Okay, Al." Just so I come back, and he said, so what's it going to take to get you out of USC? And in my ignorance, I was like, what do you mean? In my head, I was saying that, but then I was like, holy crap, this is a job
This is
offer.
the job offer, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I throw out a number that I think's astronomical. I was like 150,000. And I'm kind of smug because I'm like, I know he's going to kick me out of this office. Because I expect him to say, you little punk, get out of my office.
Yeah.
And I dropped 150 on him. He's like, okay, yeah, no problem. I was like, shit.
Should have gone 250. Yeah.
No, it wasn't. I should have gone 250. I was like, I didn't expect him to say yes.
Sure.
So then I was like, oh, well, my wife at the time is an audiologist and there are no jobs out here. I didn't research it, but he gets on the phone and is like, hey, USC Medical Center. I'm like, damn, of course they have their own medical center. He's like, hey, I've got a guy I want to hire. Do you have a position for his wife? I'm like, yeah, Al, whatever you need, man, we got you. Hangs up the phone. I was like, well, I have 3 kids and the schools out here suck. And, I don't even know where to live. So I don't even know what schools to take him to. Picks up the phone again. It's like, hey, I got a guy I want to hire. Do you still have those 3 scholarships floating around for at least a year until he figures it out? Yeah, no problem. Hangs up the phone. He's like, are we good? I'm like, apparently we're good. So all of a sudden, I have this job that's going to be 150 a year, right? Who cares what the job is? I'm on this awesome campus.
Your wife a job, you got the scholarships, everything's perfect.
Yeah. And if you stay at USC for 2 years, your kids go to USC for free. And that's it costs
300 grand, right?
At least. Yeah, for 4 years. I was like, okay, that's $1.2 million that I don't have to times 3. Right. So I'm just like, hey babe, guess what? We're moving to LA and you have a job and all this stuff. And she's like, yeah, I'm not going. And I'm like, okay, completely confused because in my mind, I was like, this is a very binary thing. Like I can either put food on the table and support the family or not. And there's no prospects in Virginia. So I really didn't understand. So then I called Bill and said, hey, Bill, hey, I'm not going to be able to take the job offer. I'm going to call Al and let him know. So he's like, well, what's the problem? It's like, well, wife's not, she's not happy about moving. He's like, well, how about this? How about have her find any house in LA that she likes in Malibu, on the beach, wherever she wants to live. I'll give you a low interest loan. You stay out here for 5 years, the house is yours. So I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened. And again, she said, no, I'm going to stay here. I was like, okay, I have to take this opportunity. I don't know what's going to come out of it, but something great's going to happen. And I want you to come with me. But if you're choosing to not go, I have to take the job. And I've negotiated that I get to come back every couple of weeks.
You're doing like a 2 week on, 2 week off, right?
Yep. So then I start the job and then the invisible injuries start to show up from the traumatic brain injuries and PTS and just wear and tear. Like it all starts to manifest and I couldn't learn new stuff anymore. My ability to learn new stuff was blocked. But I didn't realize it in the teams because you're doing the same thing. You have the basic skill at a high level. So when you learn something new, it's like it's just a modification of what you already know. You're not learning anything new anymore. But looking back on it, I had started to struggle with learning new stuff after my tour in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Like I took a job as an operations officer and I just could not figure it out. But I just thought it's because, I'm just not good at this job. Well, looking back on it, I had, after going to NICO, they did a brain scan and I had a bunch of TBI related lesions so they could see them. So that kind of solved that initial problem when I was in the military, but I didn't understand how it translated to what I was going through now that it had gotten quiet. Like I didn't have that locker room anymore. I didn't have that support system. So now I'm just by myself in LA, learning a new job in a new city, and I'm not really good at any one thing. And I can't learn anything new now.
You're missing the crap out of your kids when you're not there. Right.
All of it. And the spiral started slow, but then it started to pick up because Um, the marriage didn't survive. So now I'm not good at my job, still trying to figure out the new city, commuting back and forth, and all can't learn anything new. And then all of a sudden, I start to feel like a burden. And then it's like, well, if I'm not doing any one good thing, what should I do now? What all SEALs do, we just pile on more stuff. So I said, I have a great idea. I'm going to apply for grad school at USC.
Put more on my shoulders. Yes.
Yeah. So,
Uh-huh.
so so then it was like, again, I started grad school, but then I wasn't good at the other stuff yet. So I had this one more thing because once I started, like my dad said, I couldn't quit.
Yep.
So I was committed to this grad school, and I sucked at everything. And one day I'm just like, I feel like a burden. So I think life would be better if I just wasn't around anymore. It was an option, right? And I had this really wonderful friend out there who unfortunately had an attempt on her life herself. So she called me out of the blue one day. She's like, "Hey, are you all right?" And I was like, "No, actually, I'm not doing well at all." And I said, "Hey, I have guns in the house. Could you just come over and grab them and just get them out of the house so it's not even an option?" And before she hung up, she said, we all love you around here, and we think the world of you, and um, this is just a hiccup." And she's like, we just think you're valuable still. And that thing resonated. It's like, okay, I'm not a burden. This is just, and in my mind, I had so much to live for. But in that moment, I was just like, once that snowball started, it started to get bigger. And so it takes about, she lives in Hollywood and I live in Pasadena. It's the shortest amount of time is 30 minutes, right? So she hopped in the car and I took a walk that I knew would take about 30 minutes. Perfect timing. I'm coming back to the apartment. She's pulling in, just gives me a big old hug and hand her the guns. And she's like, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow." And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be okay. But she helped um, make sure that that was going to happen, that I couldn't hurt myself
Yeah.
that night. And once the next day showed up and I was able to process stuff, I was like, okay, you still have a ton to live for. And that was just a hiccup. But thank God she called when she did, because I wasn't going to call anybody. I didn't
Right.
even call my best friend Ryan.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Who
So,
you've lifelong friends and
yeah.
share everything, but
Yep.
you were down in a deep spot.
Yep. And I was going to suffer in silence like always. And just that one phone call to a person who was in my network. And I just had this really great community out at USC.
Yeah, you found a
And
tribe again.
yeah, yeah. And it was a great tribe. It's a little bit of a cult, and we all kind of
Is
we
that what the
know it
C
is.
stands for? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Southern cult. So, but it's just this energy that the campus and the students have. And if you're a part of the university, it's just this thing we all accept. And so I had my tribe again. I had my mission again. I had figured out that I was still valuable, but still, I still wasn't making, I knew there was still something going on. So I got in this really bad bicycle accident. And, I'd been going to this therapist for probably 6 months.
Hmm.
And I was playing defense against her because I didn't really want to get better at that point.
Yeah.
And whenever she said, "Hey, how are you feeling about this?" And first I was like, "What are feelings? Feelings are dumb." And she's like, "Because you had in buds and the SEAL community in combat, you
You
literally have to
swallow it down. Yeah.
turn it off, you compartmentalize,
Yep.
or
Yep.
it's not relevant."
Right.
So I was like, "Oh, I don't even know what that means, and I'm going to stop paying you here shortly." So I got in this bike accident, tore up the right side of my hip, and like that was on, I think, on a Wednesday, and I was scheduled to fly home to see my kids on a Friday, like clockwork. And the pain was so bad that I didn't sleep on the plane because, I couldn't get comfortable because I had this
Right.
wound. And then the next day, it was my daughter's birthday. And, I made a promise to her, like, hey, we're going to go to Great Wolf Lodge and then we're going to go to Busch Gardens. So I don't care how this leg feels. We're following through, right? And they're like, Dad, you look like shit. You don't have to go on these roller coasters with us. Like, well, how about we pick one that won't hurt the leg? So we picked one that was you're dangling. And I was like, okay, I'll be safe on this one. Oh, no, no, no. That thing, every turn seemed to
Oh,
hit that injury. And I mean, I was in so much pain, I was on the brink of tears. But I was like, all right, just pain, you're going to be fine. But I knew that, okay, I can either focus on the physical pain or the emotional stuff that I didn't quite even understand. But it was the stuff from combat or losing my father or losing my best friend in the teams.
yeah, Mike, right? Yeah, you
Yeah,
talked
just
about,
all those
right? Sure.
things. They were still sitting in there, not having been resolved. But I was, I could hold the dam back. So I was like, I can either concentrate and focus on this physical pain or this stuff over here. And the physical pain was tangible, so I put all my effort into not like succumbing to the pain. And then I found a small corner in Busch Gardens and basically just collapsed in a heap. And just finally 20 years of tears just came up. And it was awful. Like I was in fetal position and, my body was shaking. I was like, what in the world? But just all that life stuff the divorce and the move and not, and all this stuff just was finally like, hey man, we got to deal with this at some point. And, and so that's what I did. And at that point, I was just like, okay, I don't have the tools I need to beat this series of things. And that was just the catalyst to start getting better. And we went back to Amy, the therapist, and she's like, okay, we went through the whole talking through things. Just like, so where do you just reacted to what we just talked about? Where do you feel that? And I was just like, I feel it right here. For the first time in decades, my body wasn't buzzing like it normally was. And when she said, I was like, oh, I I feel something like my chest is getting tight. She's like, okay, let's get you better. And from then it was just the snowball effect again. It's like, well, now that you reached out to help, she's like, okay, here's some resources. Let's get you better. And I just researched everything. And there was so much support out there that I got the help I needed. And, I'm still here today. And I was able to, you know, have a great 4 years out there, managed the divorce and figured out how to be a good parent again. I made some mistakes, but I figured it out, and my kids were impossibly patient with me as we all navigated this new me being a single parent and making mistakes because I'd never done it on my own. I didn't have my own routines for anything. It was just, hey, this is what your mother does, and this is what we do as a family. So now I had to rediscover that on my own. And my kids and they were so great and so supportive. And then, I finally got a job back in Virginia. I work at Dominion Energy right now, and now I'm a best-selling author, which is weird.
Right.
Yeah.
When,
And
at what point in this journey did you decide I'm going to write this book? Because I know that there was some impetus from some friends and colleagues of you to kind of like, hey, you've got a hell of a story. Let's put this out. But you were kind of there was a resistance, I guess, at a point. But then that resistance broke, just like sometimes it does. So what was that like in that kind of going from this idea of people telling you should do this and then okay, I'm going to put pen to paper and start this process?
well, he kind of forced my hand because because he said, Mark, you have a great story. And they're, pillars of the community who have incredible stories. I was like, Mark Owen's got a great story. Jocko's got a great story. So many people have great stories.
Hmm.
And it was like, and it was kind of taboo for team guys to write books. So I was like, yeah, I'll pass. And a mutual friend of ours saw me do a speaking event out at USC. And here I was, 50 years old, talking to 18 or 22-year-olds. And they're like, they hung on every word. Everybody's phone was down. And they were just like, okay, what's next? What's the next part of your story? So, so finally, Bobby was like, okay, I've had enough of you. Here's I'm funding your book, and we've picked out 4 ghostwriters, interview them, pick one, and you have till the summer. And this was in December. And I was like, well, you're not the boss of me. The 12-year-old Mark showed up who was throwing my temper tantrum during Hell Week. I was like,
Right.
and so I'm like, well, he's actually funding the book, so he is kind of the boss. So so I interviewed Shelby, and she and I just really clicked. And I was like, okay, well, let's do this book thing. And I wasn't quite sure where I was going to go with the book. And I got the stat of the 22 veterans a day that were taking their own lives. And I was just like, because of their transitioning at some point. And the transition was so traumatizing, or they were out of their depth to such a degree that they said, you know what, the best option right now is for me to not be a burden. And I knew what that was like.
Yeah.
I knew
Been there.
exactly what that was like. Yeah. So I was just like, well, how about we focus on transitions and how challenging they can be? And that's when I just started telling the stories. And what I would do is I would dictate into an AI program, and then I would email to myself and to Shelby, and then she would take it from caveman to legible, and and then we would just kind of work on the stories together. And she added a lot of what I call texture to it,
Mhm.
and because in college I was an academic writer, so it was these are the facts and A, B, C, and D, and here's the answer. So she's like, well, you're talking at your audience, and we need to talk to your audience.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. So we would go through the stories, and I couldn't put it together what she meant. And then one day I did, and with the help of my editor as well. And that's when I wrote the first story of the book in New York City. And I submitted it to Shelby and the editor, and they're like, write every chapter like this. So once I figured out what right looked like,
Yeah.
now I was like, okay, I get it now. So we
Got the
took the
blueprint.
shell. Yeah. So we took the shell of the book, and I just really added the emotional stuff to it. And um, here's what things looked like, or here's what things smelled like, and here's what I was experiencing internally. Um, and then the book just ended up writing itself. And I wanted to write it in a way that my dad would be proud of it, because my dad, passed away at a very young age. He was 52. And I was 31 or 32 when he died. So writing this book, I really had a theme. I was like, hey, make sure dad is proud of this book. And so when I finished it and read through it, I was like, he'd be proud of this one.
You would.
And then I also wrote, it's like, well, I have to write it for my kids too, because hopefully my kids will read it and it'll fill in the blanks that I couldn't fill in as their
Right.
dad telling stories. And I just wanted them to be proud of it. So and then I came up with the 6 pillars, because I was like, what does transition look like? And for me, I was like, I went through this part, and I'm an introvert, but I couldn't articulate it. And then one night again, I couldn't sleep, and I was like, okay, I got it. And that's when I wrote the 6 pillars of my transition, which is isolation, indulgence, cocooning, emergence, grief, and resolution. And in the book, I highlight what each of those things mean to me. And like I said, I'm an introvert, so it may not look the same to somebody who's not an introvert, but it hopefully at least gives a framework, or a catalyst for, okay, I understand what this means. And even though I may not need to isolate, I'm going to probably engorge myself on information, and that's what I did. And when I put them all together, I was like, okay, this makes sense to me, and I really, really hope it translates to the audience. And you haven't read the book, you know, we haven't talked about this, but how does that those six pillars translate? Because they work for me, but I'm like, would they work for George, or would they work for anybody who's read the book? So, I'm just so curious as to your take on it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like it's such everyone's story is completely unique, right? And
Mhm.
but and I can't even begin for a second to even pretend that I know what it's like to have been gone through your shoes, and your experiences. And but what you talk about are the things that help someone to be able to go from broken, confused, down spiral, darkness to working on that transition of healing. Because it's not just it's never just something immediate, right? Like there's a lot of therapy, there's a lot of things that there, that grief, that cocooning stage, that isolation that you get into, but then being able to emerge from that, finding out what it is that gets you through. I think that those are, those kind of pillars are important, and you can kind of adapt and look at that over as an overlay on anybody's life. And any times that, maybe something has gone wrong or someone's lost, a significant person, in their life, like you talk about your father or Mike, you talk about your cousin. There's different situations where you go through these stages, but I love the idea of this journey of you being able to then identify those, because a lot of that talk was like you going through all these difficult processing moments until it was just too much to take, and you're at a theme park in a corner, like, and you're like, okay, like, but there's other times in the book, and I know we can't get into everything, but you have this kind of epiphany of like, I need help, and you go and you ask for it, and it's something that, you know, you being open to Bill when you're in New York and having this conversation. Yeah, I don't know what's next. I'm scared as hell. I'm not sure the next stage is. In most people's minds, you are operating at the very highest level. You're a Navy SEAL. And most people, if somebody asks you, "Hey, are you okay?" and you're like, "Yeah," okay, yeah, yeah, he's a SEAL, he's fine. But a lot of people lie about how they're really doing, and a lot of
Mhm.
people have that darkness that they go to, and they don't admit it, and it's very hard to talk about it. It's very hard to be vulnerable and let yourself, yeah, I'm fucked up right now, I'm going
Mhm.
through a real tough spot, I'm feeling maybe suicidal. I mean, it's this book, I feel like, lets people know that even at the highest level of achievement, of strength, of mental fortitude, there are times that people can fall, and that you need to rely on your tribe, your community, the safety nets of your family and your friends. And it was a phone call from somebody who had gone through that too, that just happened to be that day to call you to see how you're doing, that you
Mhm.
were very honest about it, like, I'm not okay. And
Yeah.
I love that you kind of, I think, allow others to maybe look inside their own struggles to realize that it's okay to have it be a little messy. It's okay to realize maybe you're weak, but it's not weak, I don't think, to be vulnerable. I think it's a strength to,
Yeah.
but it's hard to get through that tipping point to that. And I look at these kinds of things like, if and I'm sure you think about this too. If your book, if someone opens this and one person can make the difference of getting out of that darkness, it's more than, surpassed its importance and goals. But I think it's going to be a transitional thing for a lot of people, and a blueprint for people to follow with these six pillars. And I think, um, I'm just so damn grateful that you put this out, man. I mean, this book is phenomenal, Mark. You really have left a mark, and no pun intended, on this world of really, not only all the amazing service you've done for our country, but the service you've done for people in general by sharing your story and your struggles. I'm just I'm indebted in gratefulness to you for this. I mean, I won this book in a contest online, and it's helped to change my life too, and how I see things, and fuels me on wanting to give back and to help, spread your word, and anything I can do to help, get this out to another, level of audience. So that's what your book's done for me, man. It's really
Man,
given me some hope.
yeah, and I wrote it because people who are athletes, thousands and thousands of hours towards that goal of going to the next level.
Yeah.
And, you're going to be retired at some point, or you're not good enough to make it to the next level. And those thousands of hours you put into it, now what? That's a transition point, right? Or losing a family member or becoming a parent. There's so many transition points, and each story in the book is really a different transition point, and not all of them are struggles. Some of them are fun, like being a parent and teaching my son how to ride a bike was,
One of the best chapters, huh?
yeah, that was my favorite one to write.
Yeah.
Or with my grandfather trying to teach me baseball, I'm like, ugh, yeah, pass. So, all those things are transition points, and there's a lot of hope in the book. And but it's just a raw, hey, this is good, bad, and ugly, and it's an open invitation for you to say, um, hey, I can connect with this, or you know, if you're in a family, or no matter what you're going through, especially in the military, your family also transitions. It's not just the service member. The kid transitions, your
Oh
spouse
yeah.
transitions, the dog transitions. So if a spouse or a significant other reads it and says, hey, I read this story and this looks exactly like what you're going through, or a kid reads it and says, mom, dad, this looks like what you're going through. Go ahead and either read this chapter or read the book or something. So that was the goal, and that's what I really hope to achieve with the book. It's just, hey, this is a starting point to getting better on whatever your journey is, and however long it takes. Because I realized that as I was getting out of the military, my individual muscles to accomplish things had atrophied, right? Because I'd done things as a team for decades,
Sure.
and all of a sudden you retire and you're now, if you're in a family, your team is significantly smaller, but you have to reconnect with those muscles again. And um, sometimes it's challenging, and sometimes it's inspiring, and sometimes it's downright hard. But you'll get there because you have all the skills you need. You just need to reconnect with them in some way. And hopefully, this book, along with some great podcasts or spirituality or whatever you're into, is one of the things in your toolkit that really helps you make that transition as smooth as possible.
Wow, man. Um, Mark, I'm almost speechless here just thinking about this and getting emotional about it all, man. This is it's an amazing book, man, and I'm just so glad that you have come through what you've come through with, and that you decided, or maybe were forced to put this into words and to share with all of us. That kind of brings me around to kind of a last question I have before we can kind of talk about maybe where people can, get the book and follow your journey here. And we talked a lot about your time, your work, your family, and I'd like to ask my guest about this idea of legacy, and how do you view your own legacy in a professional and a personal level? And, I know there's a lot of different ways you might go with that, but, is that something that you kind of think about in a lot, and maybe through the process of writing this book? And how do you kind of view that legacy and what it is you hope to be remembered for and by through, at the end?
Professionally, I want my teammates to read this and say, um, he was a good SEAL, and he was a good teammate. And I can connect with a couple teammates have read it, and they said that it's like I'm talking. They're in a room having a conversation when they read the book, and being a good SEAL, um, and getting the support of your peers in that way is really, really valuable, because we're thousands of guys. Your platoon is down to those 16, and if somebody reads it and is like, yeah, they, him as a teammate, as an operator, and as a man, in these situations, or as leadership, or whatever it is, they they're able to connect with that and say, hey, he was a good SEAL. And then as far as personally, like I said, I wanted my dad to read it and be proud of it, and my grandfather, but mostly my kids. I want them to read this like, I remember that story, or you're such a goofy dad, or all the things that the nuances that they know about me. I want them to be proud of it too, and they can pick it up with pride and say, yeah, that's my dad. He laughs at his own jokes a little too much or whatever, but this is my guy. And yeah, so that's the takeaway I'd love to have for it. And with my teammates, I was able to leave that legacy that to the last day that I interacted with them, they still came to me with their problems, which was a sign of a good leader, which I learned early on. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just been a great experience. It's been a great unexpected journey, like so many of them are, and it's been incredibly rewarding. And I get to come on great podcasts like yours and meet, you know, I would have never met you. But I can tell that after this we're gonna stay in contact.
Oh yeah.
And I've just this book has brought about so many great second and third order effects that I don't even know yet.
Yeah.
But something good's coming, and now I'm ready for it.
Dude, phenomenal. Well, something good is going to be coming to people's, mailboxes soon, because I know that everyone who's listening to this, if they don't already have a copy, they're going to. Where can they find out about this? Where can they find out more about your journey? Give them your website, your handles, and how they can go ahead and get a copy of Unsealed.
Okay, so on the website, it's themarkgreene.com, and you can purchase the book there. You can learn a little bit more about me as a person, but then we can book speaking events. But on my social medias, it's all markgreene.com on Facebook, Instagram. I think I'm too old for TikTok, but I had to get my, I think, had to do the TikToks.
Yeah, you got to get them all, right?
Yeah. And then on Instagram. So the support since we first started this journey has been phenomenal. We went from almost zero to 4,500 followers and on Instagram, and it's just really been a really cool journey. So those are, and you can get the book also on Amazon. If you get it on Amazon, I would just ask if you leave a review, because
Yeah.
that pushes it up in the algorithm, and really get the book out to more people who might want to read it.
Absolutely. Well, and speaking of that too, we'll figure this out. Whether I'm buying a handful of these, but I want to go ahead and do a giveaway of some of these books. Maybe we can get some signed copies from you, and again, we'll sort that out. But I want to make sure that listeners have a chance. We can do like a little giveaway or something, and again, we'll announce the details. But I definitely want to get some into our listeners' hands, because this book it can be life changing, man, and it can really, I think, be a blueprint for people who need to maybe be able to work on their transitions. And if nothing else, it's a wonderful story of a wonderful man who served this country, who loves his family, and is trying to do something better and have every day be better. And just like your dad told you to do that, you've been doing that, man. And I just want to thank you for coming on here, sharing your story, being vulnerable, writing this book, and being able to, again, all the things you've done for this great country, and you're continuing to do by putting out your words and your message. And Mark, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on here.
George, it's been great to be on the show, and I'm so grateful and thankful that you won the contest, and dude, we've been able to connect. And thanks so much for having me on the show. And hopefully we'll do a second one, but I'll be in the Houston area a lot, so I have to meet you in person. So
I've got a
however,
homemade meal waiting for you, sir. Come on over, meet the family, and have a meal, and we will definitely get together soon.
all right. Well, thanks so much for having me on, and we'll talk soon. Yeah.
All right. Indeed. Thank you, sir.